So we got Coach Beck Flanagan. I've gotten to know him quite well over the last few months. He's going to discuss how to build a program and recruiting with you guys tonight. And I'm sure he wants to make it interactive and answer questions as well. So, Coach, how do you want to do the questions? Do you want to wait till the end, or do you want to do it throughout the presentation?
I think both is fine. If people have questions throughout, I'm happy to jump into them, but we can also do some at the end as well. I'll try to save some time for that for sure.
Okay, if you guys want to type it in the chat, I'll relay them to them, or you can unmute yourself and ask away. When I kind of will pause and ask for questions. Okay, whenever you're ready, Coach.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. And you know, I know when we scheduled this originally, neither of us knew there was going to be a presidential debate tonight. That along with the WNBA playoffs, I'm just thankful that you guys came to check it out. I hope I can give some content and information for you guys that can be useful to you wherever you coach. And really a lot of this stuff that I'm going to show you guys, I'm trying to make it applicable to multiple levels that can help college coaches, high school coaches, youth coaches, and so forth. So I may jump around a little bit, and I'll just say right now in advance, some of these topics, some of the subtopics and categories that I'm going to jump into, they could be a Zoom meeting all by themselves. So not going to have enough time really in the time here to get through everything in as much depth as we maybe could or should, but there's always going to be other opportunities down the road. But I'll go ahead and jump in and share my screen. Let me make this, where's the present button, and we'll be good. There we go. All right, cool. So my name's Beck Flanagan. I'm at Hope International University. If you guys really want to hear my background, you can check out Marc's podcast, Baskipedia. We did that several weeks back, and I talked about my journey and my path. But I will just say that at Hope International in Orange County, when I took over the position, the team, the season before I got here, the team was 5-21 and went 0-16 in the conference. And so I've been building the program, trying to turn it around. It's still a work in progress. I'm by no means done, but we're moving in the right direction. I'm proud of our team to be able to say that in the 3 seasons we've had so far, we've won 17 games one season and 19 games the other 2 seasons. So we're making good progress. We're still striving to be better, but there's a little reason why. Hopefully I know what I'm talking about to some degree. Please see this disclaimer. I want to make sure you guys, whatever level you are, follow the rules. I know there's stuff that's black and white, there's gray areas, but you know, what I'm going to share applies to a lot of different levels. So to begin with, I think community outreach is really important wherever you are. And you know, before I actually even break into more of these exact details, I want to just say a quick shout out to my assistant coaches. That's a big part of all this, building a program, having a good team. You got to have good assistant coaches. I have great ones. We have training going on tonight that they're doing in my absence, and I feel totally confident that they're doing a great job. I also had one of my assistants help me with this presentation with the graphic design part in particular. So I have to give her a shout out for that. But the feeder programs, that might be, if you're a high school, that might be your local middle school, junior high. Maybe it's the rec league or the church league in your neighborhood. Like, where are those teams that are going to lead into your program? And that's different for different levels. But I guess where I'm kind of starting is more based in the high school area, and we'll kind of jump around but get more to the college stuff as we go. But another great place is coaching clinics. And obviously now, you know, guys like Marc are doing some great Zoom sessions where we can learn a lot from others. But I've also found a lot of very successful coaches have set up coaching clinics in their gym, in their facilities. They use their team, their coaching staff, they invite other coaches to participate, and a lot of coaches to come and learn. Like, for example, over at Hope, Coach Bill Check, our men's coach, he's been doing coaching clinics for a number of years, and it's been a great way to bring in great presenters and great coaches in the area. It kind of helps build relationships, and we give back. And clearly with the Zoom, so many people are sharing the game and giving to others. It's a great way to get to know more people and build that network. You know, I know there's some, you know, especially in more rural areas, I would say, like some of the high school and local colleges have done an amazing job. An area that comes to my mind in particular is like Fresno, where by doing coaching clinics and getting the lower levels youth basketball involved and teaching them what they teach at their high school and colleges, it's a great way to kind of get their style of play taught at a young age, so the kids coming into their system are already well prepared. So another one, youth basketball during halftime. Like, that's a great way to get kids in your gym, get more people aware of what you're doing. It's good for fans, but it's also good for, you know, those kids watch your players play, and then they get out there on the court at halftime. It's a great experience. It builds a memory, you know, and they're going to think fondly of you and your program. And then club teams. That's something I feel really strongly about. When I was a high school coach, I coached club when I was in Los Angeles coaching boys. When I moved down to San Diego, I actually started a club team. I started coaching girls, and I started a youth club. It was a 7th and 8th grade club team. I just found all the best junior high kids in the city, and we started playing club basketball, start taking them to elite level tournaments and exposing them to high level basketball. And by doing that, you really have two great things happen. One, by coaching club, you're going to have a lot of high level players that you're coaching on a regular basis. So oftentimes, a lot of them, if they like the experience, they like the way you coach, they're often going to want to keep playing for you, which might be at your high school, might be at your college. The other thing I think that's a great benefit, if you can be a club coach as well as a high school or college coach, is you're just going to have more time to practice your craft, more games to coach, more practices to coach. And like anything, the more you do of it, the better you're going to become. And so just to give you guys a few examples, and as you may know, I currently coach on the women's side. And, you know, here in California, Doc Shepler, who is on your podcast and one of these Zooms, you know, he coaches a club program, Fever, up for, you know, that has a lot of his players that play at Pinewood. And you got Kelly Sopak that's now at Carondelet with the Cal Stars, and the Etowanda coach that also coaches with him for Cal Stars. And then down in San Diego, you've got La Jolla Country Day with her club team, and she's had, you know, Kelsey Plum played for her, and Candace Wiggins. And this list just goes on. Even in Orange County, I mean, you've got OC Rhythm coaches that also coach at different high schools. You've got Russ Davis at Vanguard. He runs his club program, Cal Swish, and he's been doing that for a number of years. And then you've got West Coast Premier is run by Brian Critchlow, who's at Mount Sac, the community college. So it's no coincidence that so many of these high-level programs are coached by coaches that also coach club basketball, and they have top-level club teams that kind of give them a natural way to get more coaching and more practice with their players, but also have more players that they're seeing on a regular basis that, as it turns out, oftentimes a lot of them end up at those schools. And the same thing happened for me. When I was in San Diego, I wasn't recruiting these kids, but they had a good experience with my club team. They said, you know, we want to keep playing for you. They enrolled as incoming 9th graders, and then, you know, ended up being varsity players for me as freshmen. So really important. I advise that to anyone. If you can be involved with club basketball as well as your school, it's a fantastic way to build a pipeline into good players at your school. All right, getting into developing players. And again, I know other people have had whole Zoom sessions just about player development. And there's so many good coaches out there. There's so many good resources. But I think it comes down to the question, what can you do for your players? How can you help them reach their goals, right? So if you, as a youth coach, you as a high school coach, if you've got a foundation that you're building in your players, it's built on fundamentals, and you teach them a love of the game. They have good skill set, good knowledge. The more prepared your player is to go to the next level, the more your program's going to gain credibility. Okay, and so good example of that is we have players that come in at the college level, and there are some of them. This came up recently in one of our Zoom sessions with my team, that a number of our young players didn't know what it meant to hedge on a ball screen. So, if players don't know the, basic stuff, if they can't make a left-handed layup, if they don't know, different ball screen coverages, the next level that's coaching those players, it's going to take them longer to like fill those deficiencies and help them get to where they need to be successful players at the next level. So if you recruit players that have this great thorough knowledge of the game, they have great fundamentals, they know the game, they understand help defense, they talk well, the more those players come to your program and they're ready, the reputation of the coach that taught them all that in high school or in club or youth, that coach then has more credibility, and you're going to help your future players, because now I'm going to want more players like the one that we just signed, because that person knows all these different ball screen coverages. They know, pressing, they know the differences of man and zone defense. So it's just a big thing that you're not only helping your players, but you're helping your program as well by teaching them as much as you can. Along these lines, as far as getting them to the next level, if you're able and fortunate, blessed enough to coach Division I level players, like that's wonderful. And if they're that good, coaches are going to find them, and coaches are going to get full scholarships, and they're going to be able to pick and choose which college they want to go to. But I will say the vast majority of players that even end up at the college level being able to play, the vast majority of them don't get full scholarships. This applies to NCAA Division II, Division III, NAIA, community colleges, across the board, unless they're like Division I, in which case for Division I men's and women's basketball, players are getting full scholarships. And in some cases at NAIA, in some cases for Division II, for that special player that's got that Division I talent, there are instances where players can get full rides, but it's more the exception than the rule. And so the things that I want to just point out that are really important is making sure that they're prepared, not just as a basketball player, but in other areas. So if you're getting a partial scholarship and we're trying to put together a financial aid package that'll work for that player, it's really important that they have good grades, they have good test scores, so they can get as much academic scholarship money as possible. Also, it's important that they make sure for our country that they fill out the FAFSA so they can get the federal student aid if their family qualifies for it. And this is more specific to California, but we have a Cal Grant, which is basically $9,000 or $10,000 a year if the student qualifies for it, as long as they apply by March 2nd. And I can't tell you how many times this happens at the high school level and at the community college level, where the students just aren't advised. There's not somebody there telling them and holding them accountable and making sure that they fill their FAFSA out by March 2nd. And so what ends up happening is there's kids that we like or other schools like, and they get offered a partial scholarship, but there's $9,000 or $10,000 of free money that they don't end up getting because they didn't fill out their FAFSA by March 2nd. And so it just makes it hard for those kids to then afford being able to play at the next level, depending on their family income level. So I just know from experience, I've seen this community colleges, I've seen at high school, the programs that do a good job of getting their students prepared, not just in basketball, that helps them get more scholarship money. So then their financial aid package can hopefully be a full scholarship through a combination of grants, academic money, and athletic money. And the same thing even for Division III and community colleges where they may not give athletic scholarships. I think it's even more important that they have the financial aid aspect and they have good grades and good test scores so they can get as much money as possible to make their education affordable. So That's really, really important. I said it before, but having skills, a good knowledge of the game, and making sure that you're putting your players against the best competition possible. That's going to help them get better. That's going to help you guys have more exposure for your program, for your players. And ultimately, it's going to make them better players. If you just play a really easy schedule, it might help your win-loss record, but it's not going to challenge your players as much. Their stats might be inflated against players that they would never play against in a college setting. So if you can play against the toughest competition, it's going to challenge them and get better. And the same thing goes at the college level. You know, if we're not preparing our kids for, you know, some of them want to play professional, right? And I've coached a few players that have gone on to play professional basketball. And the same thing goes there. We have to have them play against the best competition possible, so they're fully challenged, and they're going to be more marketable at the professional level, help them get a contract. Anyone have any questions so far before I move on?
I don't see any, Beck, but they might.
Okay, cool. And this is one I don't really want to get that in depth into, because again, this could be a whole another session, but making highlight videos, just some quick bullet points, because we see so many of them. And I understand it's probably not as much the coaches making them. There's probably more parents that are making highlight videos and just don't know, but many times we can give them good advice. Don't have free throws. Let's keep it short. Make sure we identify who the player is, with what team they're on, what number, what color they're wearing. It's good to have contact info at the beginning or end, and show some plays on the highlights that are going to make us want to watch more film. Okay, the highlight video is going to help us be able to see, okay, yeah, I'd like to see a full game film. But stuff like an athletic play or something really smart or a great hustle play, those are the things that are going to stand out. I mean, in a highlight video, obviously everyone's making all their shots, so that's kind of a given. But if they're doing something particularly athletic or impressive, make sure to highlight that and show it. And again, being against good competition to show that you're not just beating up on somebody that doesn't know how to play. And similarly, too many labels, too many pauses, it just, you know, makes people not want to keep watching. So keep it short and sweet. All right, moving on, looking for players. So big question to ask yourself is, where do the best players go? Where are the best players in your area? Where do they go to school, right? Especially if you're at a high school or you're at a college. Like, you want to start local. I mean, we're fortunate, the higher level you go, the more expansive your recruiting scope becomes as far as geography. But just even if you're a high school coach, like which schools, which middle schools, which elementary schools have the best players? Are they private schools? Are they public schools? And then where are they playing, right? You want to go watch them play. Maybe they're playing for their school team. Maybe they're on a recreation team. Maybe they play for a church team. Obviously, there's a lot of leagues and tournaments, especially in Southern California. They're, you know, minus COVID and the pandemic, there's usually multiple tournaments every single weekend of the year. So there's a lot of opportunities to go and see players. And that's important to see, to know and have a good sense of where these players are and who's coaching them. That's the other thing, to make sure that we can learn, like, if these are the best players in your area, who coaches them, and do you know those people, and are they people that you have a good relationship with? So along those lines, I really feel that if you can invite players to your games, if you're allowed to invite them to practice, if that's something you think they're ready for, if that'll help, but getting those kids that could help your program, may it be soon or further down in the future, get them in your gym, get them exposure to your team, let them watch you practice, let them watch you play, and give them not only something, but some people to look up to. You know, if there's good players on your team that younger players want to be like, that's a huge step in the right direction of that kid coming to your school. I know this happens constantly all over the country. There's always and I mentioned La Jolla Country Day and Kelsey Plum earlier, and I'm friends with the coach who was at Poway, which is where she lived. But then she ended up going to high school in La Jolla at a private school. So, and the same thing in Orange County, and there's multiple private schools here where a lot of players, maybe they're in 8th grade, they're trying to decide, should I go to a public high school? Should I go to a private high school? And if they have more familiarity with you and your team and your program, they're going to be more likely to come to your school and be part of your program. So it's just important that you have that, give them that exposure whenever possible. And I think a few ways of doing this, as well as inviting them to games and practices, of course, have summer camps, right? If you can have camps, if you can have clinics, any ways to get kids in your gym that you can start getting to know at a young age. And the same thing goes for colleges. You see it every year that, all the colleges across the country just about run some sort of camps. Maybe they're team camps, maybe they're elite camps. And they're great ways to invite players that they're interested in onto campus, get them in their gym, working out with their coaches and their players, and really getting to know them and them getting to know the program and the coaching staff. So the more stuff you can do like that, the better. And similarly, if you have a player that really wants to go to, a small handful of colleges, tell them to go to their elite camp. Sign up for their elite camp, go there, get to know their staff, get on their radar, see if they're good enough. If your school or your program is having any open gyms, invite people to them, get the word out. If your school or your team, if you guys have open houses, and high schools have open houses, colleges have open houses, invite the good players to these events. There's people on your campus that are working to increase engagement and get more people involved with your school and your institution. And so they're doing their part to put on good events. And I think as coaches, we can help by trying to get the players that we're interested in and invite them and make sure they're aware of these great events we have and get them there. I can speak for Hope. We run a lot of summer leagues. We run a lot of tournaments. They're good opportunities, and we're fortunate to have a great gym with nice air conditioning over the summer. So, it helps to have a lot of players in our gym, and they get to know more about our school and our program. Even when they're just parking and walking around the campus, it's almost in a way like a campus visit. So I think that's really important and a good thing to do whenever you can to increase that exposure both ways. Along those lines, and this maybe is getting to a broader scale, but what are recruiting hotspots for your program? And I'm gonna share a story from when I coached at Loyola University in New Orleans. And I'm from California originally. I had been coaching in Mississippi, and now I was in Louisiana and New Orleans. And still being brand new coach to that area and trying to get my my recruiting network going, I asked myself the question, like, our best player on our team, where are they from? And our recent best player, we had a player that had just graduated, was All-American, went on to play professionally overseas. I'm asking myself, where are these players from? And our one that just went overseas and also our current best player, they're both from Houston. And so, it occurred to me, okay, I need to go to Houston more, and I need to spend more time getting to know all the players in Houston, the coaches in Houston. And as you guys may know, with Hurricane Katrina, a lot of players that used to live in New Orleans had moved to Houston and other parts of Texas. So it was an interesting thing where not only they have good talent there, but a lot of them ended up having family ties to people that are in New Orleans. It wasn't that far of a drive. So you got to find creative ways like that where you can find good players that are going to make your program better. And you can kind of have a pipeline so you can get more of those kids in. Along those lines, I would also say an important thing is find out where are the best players. So not only just for your team, but look at your conference, look at your league, like the best players, where are they coming from? And find out, is that is there something unique to that area? If you're recruiting, if you're in college and you're allowed to recruit, or, club program that can recruit, find that pool of where these great players are and try to get more of them. So I think that's just a great way to kind of target your recruiting and be able to get those players from different areas that can help you out. I mentioned it there, promoting your program. That's always going to be important, and there's a lot of ways to do that online and in person. People have questions, go ahead and let me know.
We have one. It was back about your film. Do you prefer the highlight, or do you actually prefer full game film?
I think different coaches have different opinions of that, but personally, I prefer a highlight first. It's good to have both, but I'd want to see a highlight film first and then look at a full game next. Because if it's someone I don't know, if it's a kid I already know and I've maybe seen them play, then I'm probably going to say, hey, I want to see a full game. But in general, I think the highlight film is nice to just at least get a quick snapshot of, what they look like, what kind of stuff they can do, and then being able to watch the full game if you're still interested in that player and you feel like that's something that, that you have a need for on your team. But there are some coaches that feel otherwise, like they just want a full game. But I just think with all the, there's only so much time in a day. So a lot of coaches will look at a highlight film first. And if it catches their interest, then they'll want more from there. All right, so I'll get into recruiting more specifically here. So, as much as you can, going out and, finding talented players, evaluating them. I mentioned this here, the importance of taking really good notes. I think this is twofold. A lot of times you're seeing so many players that sometimes they blur together and it's hard to remember who's who. So taking really good notes and being descriptive is going to help you remember who are all the players. I might have seen, several hundred players play at one weekend. And so if I'm going back and looking, Monday, Tuesday, deciding who I want to call, if I have good descriptions, that's going to help me out. If I have good notes, I'm going to know exactly who I'm talking to and remember that player better that stood out to me. The second thing that I think is really important is when you then start talking with a kid or their parents, if you have really good notes, then you can speak to that, let that player know, this is what really stood out to me. The way you went after the offensive rebounds, when you were diving out of bounds to save a loose ball, like, those plays that really stood out to me, and the way you have that nice spin move down low. If you have some tangible, good examples of what stood out and what you liked about their game, that's going to make that conversation go a whole lot smoother, because the player wants to know that you actually saw them and there was something about them in particular that stood out to you, and they want to know what that is. So the great notes are going to help you achieve that, and it's going to be a great way to start the recruiting relationship and getting to know them better. This idea, I think it might have been from I think it was a coaching friend of mine that gave me this idea. I didn't make this up, but when taking notes is a good practice to write down in your notes what level you think they're going to be at. And this goes for coaches of any level. If you're watching players play and you just take a little note, whether you think they're a Division I player, if you think they're an NAIA player, if you think they're Division II, or if you think they're Division III, like whatever level you think they are, to just write a note of it and then follow up, or just kind of research later. So maybe that's a kid that we're not interested in recruiting. Maybe they're not good enough for us. Maybe they're too good for us. But at least I took a note and I just wrote down where I think they're going to end up. And then when signing period comes around, keeping track of that, it's a good way to verify how your evaluation is. It's a good way to practice evaluating and see, does it match up? Obviously there's always going to be players that sign at a level that you think is higher than they should sign, you're surprised, and vice versa, some that sign at a lower level that are surprising when you thought they were better. But by and large, it's a good way to practice your evaluation skills and be able to find out more, for the most part, am I on track? Am I getting it right more often than I'm getting it wrong? So it's kind of a good way to get better at evaluating. And obviously, the more players you see and the more you keep track of this stuff, the more experience you have, the easier it becomes. I mentioned this, and Mark mentioned when we were talking about parents at the beginning. It's important when you're watching players to not just watch the players, but watch the parents. During games, you're going to learn more than anything. And this is part of why, that I know recruiting is especially hard right now with COVID going on and people having to watch more over film, and you just don't see as much on film as you do in person. But, as much as you can be in person and watch, you see the player play, but you see how the player interacts with their teammates, with their coaches, what their personality is like, not just their skill level. And similarly, and very important, you watch their parents and see how they act. Because if the parents are acting crazy in that game, they're probably going to be acting crazy in your games. And if they're rude and demeaning of players on the team or of the coaching staff, or, being ridiculous towards the officials, like, that's what you should expect if that player comes and plays for you. So I've just found from experience that, a lot of times if you meet somebody outside of a game experience, like, you're going to get the best version of them. And but when they're actually in the heat of the game, and the same goes for parents, because they might just be watching, but for a lot of them, that's the heat of the game and their true colors come out. And, I don't mean to be disrespectful to any parents, but there are a lot of ones out there that need to, take it easy and just cheer and support and enjoy the experience and let their kids do that. So I just find it's really important, if you want to have a good team that has good chemistry and goes well together, if you have good parents, the players are often going to follow suit. If they're acting responsibly, if they're polite, if they're respectful, like, that's what you're going to be able to expect from the player as well. So a question to ask yourself, and this is different for different people, is what's more important to you, as far as if you have to decide between talent or character. I think in an ideal world, you want to have someone who's got, the outstanding talent and the utmost character. But what I've found happens more often than not, if you're not, a Power 5 school, oftentimes and even then, oftentimes sometimes you're choosing one over the other. And I think that's a choice that each coach has to make, and they have to know what are they willing to live with on a day-to-day in your practices and your games. And, for us and my coaching staff and my team, we found that having kids with high character is so important and makes such a difference. If they want to be good and they want to work hard, their talent can improve. That's my belief. So, but that's everyone's decision for themselves, what they're going to value more or less. Finding the right fit, that's really important. Love this picture of Kevin Durant. For the record, I am a fan of Kevin Durant, but my assistant coach put this together, and I know he's moved to some teams and tried to find the best experience. But again, the fit is so important, and I do believe that every school is not for every player, and every player is not for every school. And part of recruiting and going through the recruiting process is filtering people out. And I think just as players are filtering schools out and deciding, okay, that's not the school for me, coaches are doing the same thing. That's not the player for us. And so you're trying to find that fit of where the player is going to go there. They're going to be happy. They're going to be successful. They're going to help your program improve and get better. And they're not going to be a hassle or a headache. So I do think that it's okay throughout the recruiting process that, sometimes you just talk to a kid, you get to know them, and you just realize, look, this isn't the right place for you. And that's okay. And I've told, and sometimes it's based on something that has nothing to do with their personality or their basketball skills. Sometimes it's as simple as, what they want to study, what their major is. Some schools are strong in business. Others might be stronger in the medical field. And so there's just different majors at different schools. You have big schools, small schools, public schools, private schools. Some kids want to be close to home. Some kids want to be far from home. You've got style of play. There's just so many factors involved that I think it's important that coaches and players as well, and high school and club coaches helping their players throughout the process, really try to help ask a lot of questions and get to know each other and make sure that it is a good fit that works mutually for both parties, the program and the player joining the program. And don't be afraid to, realize when it isn't the right fit, to not, we don't have to force it. It's okay. Like, I've told players before, I think this other program might be a better place for you, and here's why. And of course, I've told players the opposite. I think we're the best program, and let me explain why, and why you're going to be a great success here. So that is such an important part. And you always ask yourself, by getting this player, by adding them to the team, are they going to improve your team and make it better? Or are they going to be somebody who, if they're not of high character, are they going to be someone that you're constantly dealing with that, ends up being a cancer to your team and takes the potential level of a team down? So just really important to be wary of that.
Beck, you got a recruit question here.
Yeah.
What do you tell a recruit that is an NAIA talent but doesn't show interest because of aspirations to play D1?
Oh, I like that question. Thank you for asking that. I think that in situations like that, I would tell, my first question that I would ask the player is, well, what offers do you have? You want to play Division I. Do you have any Division I offers? Have you been recruited by Division I coaches? And if the answer is no, then, look, let's just be honest that if you're not getting these offers, that tells you that that's not your level. The fact that you want to go there doesn't mean that you're just going to be able to. So in a case like that, and that does happen, I'd say more often, I'd say probably most years there is usually a player, that's maybe on that border and maybe could get a scholarship. I actually tell you a story, a kid that we were recruiting, and to be honest, I didn't think she was a Division I player. And I thought, we were even a little questionable at our level. If we thought, is she going to be quick enough? Can she, she's got good size, but is she going to be a defensive liability? And, she had some size, she had a decent shot, and there was a Division I school that ended up offering her a scholarship. And, we told her, hey, if that's your big goal is to play Division I, then you better accept that scholarship before they pull it off the table. So that happens sometimes, but I think more often what happens is that's the kind of kid that you just kind of stay in touch with and be like, okay, well, let's, I understand that's the level you want to play. Depending where you are in the calendar year, and are they a sophomore, a junior, or senior, like that makes a big difference for it. But I would say, okay, I understand you want to do that. Let's stay in touch. Let's see if you do get offers. You still want to have a good relationship with them, and I think you still want to keep, and that might move them up or down move them down your list a little bit. You might feel like, okay, this is a kid that doesn't really want to be here as much as they want to be somewhere else. So, that's an area where you probably go, are they just being unrealistic, or, has nobody ever told them? Hopefully there's someone in their life that's being truthful and honest with them like a high school coach, a club coach that can tell them, look, realistically, this is the right level for you, whatever level that may be. And hopefully that the coach that's advising that player has gone and seen the different levels. I think that's such an important part of this whole process is, if you haven't watched any NAIA games, if you haven't watched any Division II games, if you haven't watched Division III games, how do you know what that level's like if you haven't gone and watched it? If you haven't gone to community college games in California, I mean, even the community college games in California are going to be very different than community college games in Texas or Kansas, Oklahoma, places like that where they do offer full scholarships. So depending how much we like the kid and what we thought their personality was like, we might stay on them, but know that it might happen later that we would end up getting a kid like that we maybe stay in touch. And, sometimes kids like that decide that they're going to go to a community college. And they feel, and maybe there's a community college coach that's telling them, hey, you want to be Division I, come here. We're going to help you get better. And then you can go Division I after 2 years at the community college. And, some coaches tell them that. I've rarely found that to actually happen. Usually kids that are Division I material are recruited as such out of high school. And if they don't go to Division I, it's usually because maybe grades or some other reason they end up at a community college and then they go to Division I after they get their grades and so forth in line. So I hope that answered that, but if there's any more clarification, let me know.
We got one more for you.
Mm-hmm.
You got 2 questions. It's a 2-parter here. Top 3 to 5 attributes you look for in recruiting. And after that, maybe what are your deal breakers when you look at a recruit who has the athletic ability?
Yeah, I'd say for us, we're looking for kids that are hardworking, that are good character, that are going to be good kids that want to come. Hope International, we're a faith-based university, so we want to find kids that are the right fit. Athletically, looking at them on the court, we want kids that are athletic, skilled, good players, have good motor. I mean, everyone likes players that are long and tall and athletic and can shoot. I mean, I'd say we're looking for, something interesting we've done in the past that we've had some success. Sometimes you find players that maybe don't quite pass the eye test for one reason or another, but they are just really effective and they get it done, despite maybe being undersized or not the prototypical look for their position. So sometimes we find players that are kind of overlooked for one reason or not another, but they're very talented and very skilled. But I guess the second part, as far as deal breakers, if they're, if we feel like they're going to be an attitude problem, if they're going to, if they're going to hurt the culture of our team, if they're going to be a headache. I mean, right now we're working on our return to practice phases, and the amount of trust that we have to have with these college kids that they're going to, once they leave practice or training, right now we're still doing kind of conditioning stuff, but once we get to the point where we're practicing, we have to trust them that they're not going out to parties and putting themselves at an exposure to, catch COVID and pass it throughout our team. So I think it's just really important that we find players that are of good character, that we can trust, that love the game, that want to be good. They're here for the right reasons. They want to get a good education. They love the game. They love their teammates. So, deal breakers, players that are selfish, players that have attitude problems, that are disrespectful, that are lazy. Those would be some main that step out. There's probably some other deal breakers that aren't coming to my mind right now. But yeah. I appreciate these questions, you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to move forward to the recruiting services. And there's scouting services and there's recruiting services, and scouting services, there's a number of people around the country, around the world actually, that have scouting services that in most cases they get certified by the NCAA, but they basically watch players and make scouting reports. They write reports on them. They get their contact information, their phone numbers, and they create their own databases. We have a number of these guys here in SoCal. They're all over. I mean, and what the scouting services do, they basically compile information as far as their like ratings, their reports, and then the contact info, and then they basically sell that to college coaches, and as like a subscription service. And so then colleges will often have several different scouting services, and like they might have one scouting service that covers international players, and they might have, you know, one that's got more of a Texas focus, maybe one's got a California or an East Coast. So depending on the service, some of them are regional, some of them try to be international or across the country, depending how big the service is. But those services make money from just watching players and trying to have honest evaluations and then sell that to the college coaches. The recruiting services like Captain U, like NCSA, Be the Beast, Be Recruited, it's probably a dozen more of them. They are, I would say they're almost more like marketing services, where they're, you know, they let the players create a profile, and a lot of them have a free version, but they're hoping to sell kids and their families on an upgraded version where they'll get more features, they'll get more promotion, maybe someone's making emails on their behalf or phone calls, but they're trying to market that kid and then have the families pay them. So not to say these are bad things at all. I just have always been one to try to save money for my program, for our players, for, you know, it's just kind of how I was raised, is trying to be, you know, savvy with finances, try to save money and live within our means. So I know at a lot of programs that I've been at with lower budgets, we have to be creative and let our money stretch further. So I will just say, from a high school standpoint specifically, I really recommend using Max Preps, which most high school coaches do, but interestingly, like there's a number of high school coaches that don't put all the stats in. And I think something as simple as updating the stats after all your games, believe it or not, like every college coach is looking at Max Preps to see the stats that kids are putting up. And that's a lot of times gonna, you know, might help them in making a decision to come watch your game and your team play versus another team. They might go, okay, Friday night, there's, you know, 50 basketball games going on in the county. Which one am I going to go to? They might go to Max Preps if, you know, maybe they have someone in particular they're going to see, or maybe they're just looking for players. And so I think Max Preps is a good way to kind of promote your players. It's free. I think most coaches use Huddle or Crossover or Synergy, and those all have ways in which you can help with film, whether highlights or just posting. I think Max Preps works with Huddle as far as putting little highlight clips on your Max Preps page, so it's all in one place. So I think those are a couple of free ways that you can help your players get exposure, help them get recruited. Again, those recruiting services aren't bad. I mean, they can do profiles, but it's, you know, it's up to the players if they want to spend the money. In my opinion, it's more effective for the club or high school coach that wants to help their players. Again, you know, ask yourself, why are you doing this? If it's just to help yourself get wins, then, you know, you're probably not here tonight. And so those of you that are here, I think you guys care. You want to have a good program. You want to help your players. And I think you can help your players more than any of these services by building relationships with coaches at the next level. You know, I have friends that are professional coaches. I've traveled to Europe and different parts of the world where I've gone and watched, you know, different basketball tournaments and events, FIBA stuff. And while doing that, whenever possible, I'm trying to meet these coaches out there, many of which are professional coaches, and I, you know, build relationships. In fact, when I was in Lithuania, I stayed with this professional coach. He hosted me in his house for a week. It was amazing. And he was taking me to all the games. And, he's a guy who we've sent players to because I have a good relationship. He knows me. He trusts me that I'm going to tell him the truth about a player if they can play at the next level or not. So similarly, even for high school and club coaches, if you know college coaches and you've been to their games or you've been to their practices or they've come to your games or your practices, the more you know them and you call them, you email them, if you have that relationship, that's going to go so much further than in getting your player some exposure. And maybe they're not going to recruit your player, but they can at least give you an honest evaluation of what they think of your player and what level they could play at. So I hope that helps. I'm not going to really get into culture. I think it's something that there's just so many great speakers have talked about. I think there's so many great books, podcasts. It's such a buzzword, but I'll just say this. I really do believe the players you recruit and bring in are going to enhance or detract from the culture that you're working on instilling. So I think recruiting is a huge part of culture building. You want to have a good culture, recruit good players. And that's, again, my personal philosophy. Even if I was a high school coach, if there's a kid that you think is going to hurt your program, there are ways to not let them be on your team. I mean, you can, put them on JV, or you can, not play them. I mean, there's ways you can do it. But just know that who you bring in your team and your program is going to make an impact, for better or worse. So I mentioned about communicating and building a relationship, getting to know other coaches, getting to know players. I think that it's so important to have a personalized message. I think that too many people send, and I'm guilty of it too, sending mass emails to people. It's easy to notice when it's a mass email, and it's easy to ignore. I think any one of us can look at our email inboxes, and there's a bunch of emails that you just never responded to as a mass email. But when someone takes the time to be personal, like, hey, I came to your game, or I was at your summer camp last year, even now in this time, hey, I was on your Zoom, I really learned a lot from the presentation. I really liked when you talked about A, B, or C. Those are the kind of things that are going to get people to reply and respond, because they feel like it's personalized. You're taking the time. You want to actually communicate with them for a specific reason. You're not just blasting it out on MailChimp or something like that. So while you're personalizing it, you also want to be creative. If you don't know the person and they don't know you, even if you're personalizing it, you still might have to be creative. You might have to be persistent. There are times where even a personalized message doesn't get through to someone. They don't respond. So, don't give up. You have to keep trying. And this goes for coaches, this goes for players, but find the best way to communicate with each person. Some people are good over email. They like that. Some people have thousands of unread emails, so they're not the best way to reach them. Some people, I guess you could say this may be old fashioned, but calling someone on the phone, that's personally, I like to talk to people over the phone. But now, of course, you've got a lot of people that would much prefer a text message to a phone call. Social media, that's another way you can reach out to people. But just find out what that person wants to communicate, and then use that medium rather than just what you're comfortable with. And more specifically, as you're communicating, you really want to get to know the person better. I think that's the key. You got to be interested. You want to find out about them. You want to build rapport. So you're getting to know them. You're telling them a little about yourself, but you're also, more importantly, I think, trying to find out about the other person. And the more you find out about them, the more you're going to find things out about them, maybe that you have in common, that you can have more conversations about. And it's not always just about, it's not just about basketball all the time. I think for recruiting, I think relationship building, people want to know that you care about them as a person, not just as a basketball player or as a basketball coach. So, just getting to know them, getting to know their family, getting to know their interests. I mean, obviously, you're talking to a coach or a player, you both have a great interest in basketball, and that's a great place to start. But in my opinion, my experience, is not the only place to stick with. Phone calls with younger people, just from what I've found, most younger people don't like phone calls. So if you are going to make a phone call with a younger person, one, expect that they're probably going to try to avoid the phone call in the first place. So you might even have to text to set up a time that you can talk. But when you do get someone on the phone that doesn't want to be on the phone, which I would say applies to almost every teenager and young person, even a lot of young coaches that would much prefer texting. If you're on the phone with them, keep it maybe more brief, more specific, have a purpose, get to the point, and don't drag it out so that it's uncomfortable for them. So again, this is just about being sensitive to the other person and what's important. I have a lot of coaching friends, and especially older coaches that are mentors to me, that I love getting on the phone with them, and we'll talk for an hour and a half on a regular basis, and they love it and I love it, and that's great, and we can just ramble on even at times. But I have found, even with younger assistant coaches, with younger players, keep it brief and they appreciate it, and text them when you can, because they appreciate that probably even more. This is super important, and this goes for relationships in general, but especially recruiting. Follow through. You got to follow through. You have to stay in touch. Like, people, especially young people, if you've been talking to them and then you stop talking to them, they're going to automatically assume that you don't like them anymore. You're ghosting them, right? That you're done, you're over. And that's you might have thought like, oh, we had a great recruiting visit. This player really liked our team. We really like them. We're really interested. They could be a great addition to our team. And you think everything's great, but then if you fall off and you don't talk to them for a month, and I get it, it happens, the season's going and you're busy and you just don't get around to it. Well, maybe you reach out a month later and they may have committed somewhere else, and they tell, one of the first things they say, well, coach, I didn't think you liked me. I didn't think you wanted me on your team. And it's like, whatever gave you that impression? Well, I didn't hear from you for a month, coach. And that's a good way to lose recruits, is to not follow through, to not stay in touch with them. So really feel like that's important. Have that persistence whenever you can. Any questions? I'm getting near the end here, but I think this is my last slide, actually. I'll just go ahead and power through this and then take as many questions as there may be. I said it before, but having great assistant coaches. Big shout out, Coach Ali. Some of you may know, he's our recruiting coordinator. He's been with me for a couple of years already. And when you have a great working relationship and a great friendship, I mean, that makes a big difference. And the other coaches like Leilani and Coach Shea that have helped me out and helped our program and our players, it goes a long way. It really, really does. Another thing, if you have a team of likable players, that really helps, right? Because the players, when you're recruiting them, one of the biggest questions they have is, am I going to feel welcome on the team? Am I going to feel comfortable? Like, this is somewhere I could see myself for the next 4 years. It's really the biggest decision most young people will make, is deciding what college they're going to go to out of high school. So a lot of them want to find out and make sure, like, will I like my teammates? Will I feel comfortable? So if you have likable players that make recruits feel welcome, that's going to be a huge part of your recruiting process when you have them interact with each other, whether on a visit or, even if they come watch a game and you're, invite them into the locker room after the game, or maybe just have your players go talk to them in the stands. That helps a lot. Similarly, if you don't have likable players, I mean, I have a coaching friend on the East Coast that he's he would not tell he had such a toxic environment with his returning players. He was a new coach. He inherited these players, and he felt like they were so toxic that he wouldn't even share the names of his recruits, his incoming recruits, until they were like on campus, because he was afraid that they would sabotage his recruiting efforts and try to reach out to players and convince them not to come. Like hopefully, none of you are in a position like that, but sometimes you take a coaching job and you're trying to turn the program around, and it's just so toxic that you almost have to do extreme measures like that. But if you have players that are bought in, that are happy, that are doing well, like it makes recruiting just so much smoother and easier, and you don't have to feel like you're hiding anything. We as a program, we want to be very honest, upfront, fully transparent in everything we do. And so we always say, hey, ask the players any question you want. Like, we don't have secrets here. Ask them what you want. We want you to get the best picture possible, so you are 100% sure if this is the right fit for you. There's a lot of ways to save money on recruiting trips. I know with COVID, there's not as many people going on recruiting trips, myself included. And here in California, all the high school seasons and community college seasons have been pushed to the spring. So we're kind of waiting a lot anyway before we go out and see a lot of players. Although there are more and more tournaments, club tournaments that are popping up in different places. But that's a whole nother topic that I'm not going to get into, but I have done presentations in the past about creative ways to save money and make your recruiting dollar go further. But just to kind of wrap this up, I wanted to leave a few resources. Dan Tudor, phenomenal resource for recruiting. He's got a great website. He does an amazing podcast he's been doing for years. So there's tons of episodes on there. He started doing a text message group where you can get, daily or so text messages all about recruiting. He's got some great stuff. There's a lot of really good books out there. Most of them are books maybe related to sales, and there are a lot of similarities between sales and recruiting. And then there's just a lot of good seminars, a lot of coaches to learn from, podcasts, just ways to learn. And, for anyone that wants to become better at it, it's something that you can learn more skills. It's something you can practice and get better. And, I just wanted to say to everyone, to relax and don't worry too much about rushing the process. And that goes for current players. I think that goes for current coaches as well. I'm finding with COVID that so many people are freaked out about, will there be a season or won't there be? And will I get an offer or won't I? And so I think there is some degree of players rushing to commit sooner than they normally would without doing their full research and diligence. And similarly, I think there's college coaches throwing offers around because maybe they're afraid we're not going to fill our spots, or what if the players that are good commit somewhere else early? And so I think there's a lot of rushing going on, a lot of people making rash decisions that are likely to lead to more transfers in the future because things may not work out the way they envisioned because they just didn't, take their time with the process and go through all the steps. So if you have a player that's in the process, tell them to relax. Like it's going to happen. Control what you can control, keep getting better. And if you're a coach, like similarly, there's going to be plenty of opportunities. There's going to be a lot of good players still out there and plenty to go around. So with that, again, here's my cell phone number, my email. I'd love to take any more questions that there are. And if you guys have anything you want to talk about at another time, if you want to call me, if you want to text me, if you want to email me, I'm more than happy to share and to help in any way I can.
Mm-hmm. All right. Great job, Beck.
Thank you, Mark.
Any questions for Coach? Well, there's Coach's contact information, like you said. If you want to continue the conversation with them, you can. But I wanted to thank him for coming on tonight and passing on some great information. I knew I took a couple things as a high school coach, so that I didn't even think about. So appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I know it's